Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant, and we're glad to be back with you again today. This is going to be a very hopeful and inspiring and fun episode today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
So, we had a really, really good week this past week, and brought up lots of emotions. Some negative, I guess, in some ways, but mostly just really positive and hopeful and very exciting. And so we kind of just want to tell a little bit of a journey story, sort of a thing. I'm not even real sure how to start this, because there's sort of three parts to this story, and we've told bits and pieces of it all along the way, but there's obviously this new component and new piece to the story.
Well, tell them what we did this weekend.
So this weekend we had a chance to go to
Not this weekend, this week.
this past week. We had a chance to go to an event that was put on by WinShape Marriage over in Rome, Georgia. And it was called the Marriage Collective. So it was basically a gathering of marriage ministries and leaders in the marriage ministry space. And we can tell a little bit more about that when we get to that part of the story, because I think it's neat. I mean, people might be interested, like who all was there and that kind of thing. We might could tell a little bit about what went on and what what we did there. But here's what happened. This is the way every conversation would start. People would come up to us, and they would say, "Where are you from?" And we would say, "Mississippi." We say, "Mississippi." And
No, we did not.
we'd say, "Mississippi." And then they would say, "Oh, is this your first time here?" The reason they would ask that is because there's people that come that have been invited to this event multiple times. So there were people and ministries represented there that had been there for, more times. And we would just always say, funny you should ask that question.
Because, yes, it's our first year to the Marriage Collective.
Yes.
But no, it's not our first year to WinShape.
And as far as we know, nobody else that was there had the story that we had.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't. Now there were people that have similar marriage journeys that we have had, but nobody had this part of their story. Yeah. So it was very interesting. So here's what we wanted to do today. We wanted to just rewind basically 20 years, almost to the day, like 20 years.
Yeah,
crazy. So 20 years. We want to rewind and just tell you kind of a 3-part story that, I mean, this is like, it's just miraculous.
Yeah.
And I hope that as people listen to this, they just go, if your marriage is struggling, you go, man, like God still cares.
Yeah.
And he's writing our story and he's not done with us. And then just to see, no matter where you are in your marriage, your life, whatever's going on, just to see this picture of incredible redemption.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's overwhelming, emotional, all those things to think about it. So let's just back up 20 years.
Yeah. So we were on the campus of Berry College. That's where WinShape is now. But 20 years ago, we were on the campus of Berry College because my cousin was getting married. So my first cousin was getting married. Luke was 2 at the time. And we took off. Our family went over to Berry College for their wedding. And so it was just a really sweet time that we got to be with family and love on my cousins. And I even was talking about this with my cousin the other day, and even got some pictures.
Yeah, no, I thought about that, and if we get some time this week just to go along with I wish we were really good at this and had more time, because on our YouTube if we could, while we're talking about this, if we had pictures
in. Maybe we could put them in a reel or something.
Yeah,
I have to ask permission
we'll figure
to
out.
throw up somebody else's wedding pictures.
Well, but we were in there.
Yeah, we were.
So, okay.
Yeah. So we were at that wedding 20 years ago on the campus in the chapel. It was it was a beautiful wedding. Well, while we were there, a couple was taking us around the campus, and it was Bubba and Cindy Cathy, and they were telling us about the dairy farm and how they were making it into a marriage ministry facility. So they were redoing all of the old dairy barns and all of this stuff back there, and they were going to make it a place for marriages who were either in crisis to come and get hope, or marriages that just needed encouraging. They just were really passionate about pushing couples to the Lord in their marriage. And we walked along and listened to it and listened to the spiel, and we're like, oh, that's neat. And that was about it.
So we saw this facility. It was incredible what they were doing. Dairy farm getting made a dairy farm makeover. And then we fast forward to 2011.
Yeah. So in 2011, in August of 2011 is when I confessed to infidelity, and our marriage hit rock bottom. And I mean, really, this part is your part to tell because God reminded you of that place. So tell them about that.
Yeah, so the night that you told me, August the 23rd of 2011, I left the house. And for those of you that I know some of you have heard our story multiple times and in multiple different ways, but those of you who haven't heard the story, it was a complete shock and completely out of the blue, and I didn't know what to do. And so I left the house. I went and told somebody what had happened. I came back, and it was in the middle of the night. I mean, it was because when you told me, it was already really, really late. But I came back in the middle of the night, and I decided to go and get in the bed with our youngest son. And so I laid down with him, and as I just was crying out to God, and, just so confused, so hurt, so broken, all of the things that you can imagine that were going through my mind, I really, truly believe that I heard God say, you can leave. Like, I am giving you permission to leave. And from a biblical perspective, I knew that was an option. But at the same time that I was hearing, I'm giving you permission to leave, I also heard God say, but I'm asking you to stay. And I had no idea what that was supposed to even look like. And so as I'm laying there, I'm thinking, okay, well, if I take this step, and now this is hours, like literally hours after confession, and I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to fight for my marriage, where do I even start? And I had my phone, and I'm pretty sure I just started Googling and searching for just something that could help me. And I don't know if I searched for affair recovery. I just remember trying to find something, and you guys have heard us say so many times, part of the reason why we do what we do is because I couldn't find anything. But I remembered that God put it in my heart and on my mind, this facility that we had toured. So that would have been 7 years earlier. And I remember laying there thinking, I don't even know if this place exists. Like, I don't know if they finished it. I don't know if it's still being run by the Cathys. I don't know if it's still for marriages. So I didn't know what it was called. So I actually searched Bubba and Cindy Cathy marriages. And this place popped up. WinShape. WinShape Marriage. We were a little bit familiar, with it and with the word WinShape, but just didn't really know. And so as I dove in a little bit deeper into it, discovered that they had what was called a marriage intensive. And it's basically, I found out it was 5 total couples. So if you go, it's you, 4 other couples, and 2 counselors. And you're there for a week. And it made it sound like this was basically almost like last-ditch effort.
Yeah.
Like if your marriage is in crisis and you don't know if you're going to survive, this is where you go. And I was like, this is us. Like we have to go to this. And so we started doing a little bit of checking into it. We ended up, over the course of the next few days and maybe even in the next week or so, we had a conversation about it to where I think we both said, okay, we're willing to try this. And we made a phone call to sign up for it. And the thing was like, it might have been $4,000 at the time. Like it was super expensive. And when we called, somebody had already called and paid for it. And it was just that we didn't know that. And we just had to take the step to say that we wanted to go. And somebody had covered that.
Yeah.
So in October of 2011, so almost exactly 13 years ago, we loaded up and drove 5.5 hours to Rome, Georgia, and pulled on to Berry College campus for the second time in our lives. This time not going to a wedding, but going to try to save our marriage. We made the long 3-mile drive through the woods up to the WinShape Center, and we started our intensive.
Yeah. And it was a powerful, powerful week. We have often said when we're revisiting our story and encouraging people towards a WinShape intensive, marriage intensive, we tell people that it was a solid part of saving our marriage. Like, I don't want to say we couldn't have done it without it because God can work miracles, but he used that powerfully in the miracle that he created for us. And it just was a time that we were able to just really be ourselves and really just tell everything with no eyes of judgment, with no eyes of condemnation. Like everybody, there was 4 other couples and us and 2 counselors. And all of the couples there were, just hanging on by a thread in their marriage. And so it was encouraging to see that we weren't the only ones that were struggling. And then also just all that we learned there about each other, about marriage, and most importantly, about our relationship with the Lord, that we left there feeling hopeful for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was 6 weeks after confession. So it's not like it was a miracle pill that we took and all was well, but we left there with more hope than we had in, 6 weeks.
Well, we had started counseling back home. So we knew we were fighting for our marriage, but this is just sort of what catapulted us into let's do this thing.
Yep. And they gave us so many tools that we could.
And that's the thing, these tools, this is what we use.
Still teach. Yeah.
We teach it, we use them ourselves. And I would say that a lot of the stuff that we share with couples, it's sort of our own version of the things that we learned that week. And it was incredibly powerful. We've gone back and looked for pictures. It's a little bit bizarre. And I know that back in 2011, it wasn't the age of take a picture and video of every single thing.
That's right. There were no selfies.
Right. People weren't doing all that. But we don't have any pictures of me and you there. But promise, we were there. We were there.
Well, and when I look back on it, it just wasn't a time that we were like, hey, let's take our picture. We didn't want to remember it.
That's right.
It was awful. We were walking through the darkest days of our life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something, when I look back at pictures in general from 2011, post-confession, like there weren't many pictures on my phone in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, things here and there of our boys, but it just wasn't, it wasn't something that you wanted to
we weren't
capture.
documenting. Yeah, we were not documenting
exactly.
that season of our life.
We had a few pictures of the building, and I think I took a picture of the chef, and there was a piece of artwork in there that talked about brokenness and a Band-Aid and true forgiveness that I took a picture of, that somebody who had actually been through the intensive and did the artwork for them and sent it back, and they hung it on the wall, and that meant a lot to me. But it just wasn't pictures of me and you there.
Well, and one of the things I was going to say, people may be listening and think, man, that's something we need to consider. We have people reach out to us all the time about this, and we point them to this specific intensive. Yep. There are other intensives around the country, but this is just what meant so much to us and is such a part of our story. So we'll, throughout this week, if you don't already follow us on social media, make sure you do that on Instagram and Facebook especially, and we'll make sure that this week that we try to promote a little bit about the program, because you can get there by going to WinShape Marriage and look for the intensive, but their intensives are actually run by Focus on the Family now. And their program is called Hope Restored. And so if you go to the Hope Restored on Focus on the Family's Hope Restored, you'll be able to look up and find these intensives. And they actually have some in other areas of the country. We just happened to go to the one at WinShape, and so they have a partnership there. So
fast forward
to last week.
Yeah.
And actually this, and there's even, I guess, a little bit more of the story, because sometime in the last couple of years, maybe about this time last year, and I don't remember exactly, but we got an email. We get emails quite often from people that are in the marriage ministry space, and they ask about being on our podcast. And we got one that it wasn't from Julie Baumgardner, but it was from somebody maybe on her staff. And so I'm sure it's probably somebody that's just responsible for trying to get the message of WinShape out.
Right.
And so they reached out to us and said, hey, would you guys like to have Julie on your show? And a lot of times when people do that, because we get them often, and we don't know these people, but WinShape, I mean, it just was like, So we did a little investigating. We actually asked your cousin, and we're like, do y'all know Julie? And they were like, oh yeah, we know Julie really well. And so we reached back out to Julie. They actually gave us her real phone number. And so we reached out to Julie and we said, Julie, you have no idea how much WinShape means to our marriage and is so much a part of our story. So we'd love to have you on our podcast. So we got to interview her. It was, at the time, I think it might have actually been only the second person that we ever had an interview with. Your mentor, and then maybe we did her. Kylie was in there somewhere, your cousin. But anyway, so we did this interview with her, which was just an incredible, for us, it was incredible full circle to have the person in charge of WinShape now on our podcast talking about marriage ministry. Well, we've sort of kept in touch with her off and on, different emails and things like that back and forth. But we knew about this marriage collective, and just a few weeks ago, it hasn't been very long, maybe back in August, she invited us to attend. And it was, I'll have to say, first of all, we both kind of felt like, do we want to go back there? I think that we knew we wanted to go back, but we also had this feeling of, do we belong? Like with marriage ministry people and leaders, and we were like, do we even belong in this space? So I don't know. How did you feel leading up to it?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't really battle it until we got there. I knew immediately. I wasn't surprised about the fact that the enemy was trying to derail us. But we had a random phone call from one of our kids the night before that was bizarre and was, kind of upset me a little bit. And And I was kind of battling that already, going into this not in a good headspace. And then driving on campus, I was like, I don't belong here. Like, I could actually hear the enemy say, not actually, you know what I mean? The thought, what the enemy saying to me, are you seriously driving back on this campus in this capacity? Like, after what you were here for before? Like, this is not where you belong. This is not for you. This is for people who don't have your story, you know? And I was like, dang it. And I even knew it was coming. Like, I knew that he was going to get after me in every way possible. And so I can, like, when I tell you I was physically, mentally, in my mind, physically pulling up a shield and going, you're not going to have this. Like, I am going to battle for this time, because I was so excited about the encouragement that was coming, because this collective is not, oh, let me give you 136 tools to take back and use in your marriage ministry. All this was encouraging us.
Yeah.
We worshiped together. They had speakers that just told us how valuable what we are doing is. And then, of course, we made connections with people that do marriage ministry, and we're just encouraged by them as well. And so I knew that the Lord was wanting to pour into us, into a vessel that would then be poured out to others. And I knew the enemy didn't want that to happen. And so it was a battle over that ground.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of times I say the enemy this, the enemy that, the enemy this, because he is real and he is roaring around roaming around like a roaring lion. And so I know he's real, but I also don't want to give him too much credit, because he's been defeated.
Yeah.
What Jesus did on the cross, he has been defeated, but that doesn't mean that he's not after us. And so I felt very much like he was after me as we drove onto those grounds, and I had to remind myself that he was defeated. And I told him, I was like, not today. You are not going to get me. Like, you are not going to have my mind, and you are not going to distract me from what God has for us here. And so it was just a claim. It was, we talk a lot about drawing a line in the sand, and that's what I did. I was like, you're not welcome here on this land.
Yeah. Well, leading up to it for me, I from the very beginning thought about the redemption, because we talk to couples all the time about redeeming things, and not just redeeming your marriage, but redeeming parts of your story that are hard, and going to places and taking them back for God instead of the enemy. And the thing is, that place was not a place of the enemy anyway. That's where there was healing there. Sure. But the who we were when we arrived there was so different from who we are now. That was, for me, it was like, I want to redeem this place, because the last time we were here, we were in a battle for our marriage. And what a miracle and a redemption story that 13 years later we come back as the weapons.
That's right.
That's what God, he took exactly what Satan wanted to use against us, and now he's using it to fight against Satan.
Yep.
And so we were there, and just like what Heather said, it was so encouraging, because this was not, it wasn't a conference. It was just a time of renewal and refreshing and being poured into. They told everybody, leave your egos and leave your logos at the door. And so really, if you didn't ask people or already know them, which we knew a lot of them because they were some of them were our heroes, but nobody really knows exactly, who you are. You weren't just going around and promoting yourself. There was certainly time for connection, but I just remember the first night we started worship, And that was the time that I had the most overwhelming emotions, because I just was thinking, we were 50 yards up the hill in this other location where there was an intensive going on that night. I mean, that week while we were there was an intensive going on, so nobody was even allowed up on that part of the complex. And I just remember thinking, what God did over 13 years, and who would have ever thought that we would be back there.
Yeah.
For that.
And then not only that, but you and I both had to fight the desire to want to just run up that hill where there were signs that said private event in progress.
Yep.
Rip the signs out of the ground, bust in the front doors and go, y'all can do it.
Yeah.
Like, you can do it. Like, God can do it. And we joked about doing that. We were like, let's just bust up in there and say, we were where y'all were 13 years ago. But we didn't.
We didn't.
But
we didn't want to get arrested.
That's right. But I just, what a picture of hope for anybody out there. And we met all sorts of people at this place that infidelity wasn't their story, but there was lots of mess.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of
And
mess.
there were some that infidelity was part of their story.
Yeah. And then there was, pornography. And I mean, I can't even go down the list. So many things that I just was like, God uses, just like he does in the Bible. God uses people who are a mess. Like, he's not looking for perfect people. He's not looking for people who have it all together. He's looking for people who are honest enough to say, like my mentor says all the time, I mean, I wasn't a prostitute, but I could have made a good one. I wasn't a drug addict, but I'd have made a good one. Like, we are all 2 seconds and a step from giving way to sin if it is not for the grace and the mercy and the power of Jesus. And so just admitting that, everybody in that conference could admit, I am nothing without Jesus. Like, there is no good thing we have to offer you guys except for Jesus. And through him, there is so much hope, and we can tell you so many encouraging things about marriage, but it starts with Jesus.
That's a good word. Well, it was quite the redemption story to go back there, and we wanted to just give you guys a glimpse of the whole picture, the whole story, because I know that you saw stuff on social media probably, and you just kind of were trying to connect the dots in some ways maybe, and we just wanted to share that because I don't know, you cannot listen to that story and not walk away with hope for whatever season of life that you're in and whatever season of life your marriage is in. All right, we're going to sign off, and we will see you guys next week.
Peace.